Welcome everyone to This Week in Svelte, episode 132. I don't know why, it took me way longer than I was expecting, and I think it's not the right, I'm not streaming to the right. Come on. Okay, sorry guys. I don't know why, I have two streams. I guess I created one and Karim created another. For some reason there are two streams. This should be the correct one. I'm trying to figure out if I can cancel the other one. I don't know. Let me see. Yeah, okay. I'll try to see if I can. So let me see if I actually pinged correctly. Sorry. I'm sorry, guys. The one that is not live. Sorry guys, there is a bit of confusion. I had basically two streams for some reason. Now should be fixed, I hope, and I hope everybody here is on the right stream. So let's jump right into it so that we can actually start this episode, which was a bit chaotic. We are back on our beloved Svelte Changelog. Antoine did all the fixes that he needed to do. So yeah, we are back on the nice website. And let's actually take a look at the changelog so we can see in Svelte 5.53.1 fix handle shadowed function names correctly. So I can't remember if this, yeah, okay. So I actually fixed this, I think. Actually, yeah, Simon fixed this as an alternative to what I did in a much nicer way. This was a pretty interesting one because basically inside Svelte, we have to keep track of the scope of things, right? So in JavaScript, if I do function stuff console.log count, this thing here, count is referring to this variable here, because based on how the JavaScript scope works, whenever you have a function, it's called like a porous scope, in the sense that if there's no other variable declared within this scope, everything above, it's actually like in the scope of the function. So like, you know how scope work. And we have to basically programmatically keep track of the scope during the analysis phase. So we convert your string into an abstract syntax tree, which allow us to navigate the thing that you wrote, but then we also have to keep track of the scope. So for example, we need to make sure that this is count. And the reason why we need that is because let's say that I do count plus plus, for example. Now we know in Svelte that you are actually reassigning this variable count. And to know that you're reassigning this variable count, we need to keep track of the scope. Because, for example, if I do this, let count is equal to 0, now this count plus plus is not reassigning this variable, but is reassigning this variable. So like, let's actually see the changes. If we take a look at the JS output, you can see that this let count, despite being declared with state, does not become a state, and the reason is because we see that it's not reassigned, and so we can avoid an extra memory and performance overhead. But if I comment this out, you can see that now I actually use state here. And the reason why we use state here is because now this count plus plus is referring to this count here. So all of this to say, the reason why this is important is because we need to keep track of the scope, as we said, and there was a small bug in the scope calculation, which meant that this was apparent only on the server, but basically, so like this is 5.53.1. So yes, in 5.53 there was already still the bug. This basically meant that if you had a derived inside a function that was named like the function, it was creating a problem. Let me show you. Let stuff is equal $sign derived. I can do $sign derived 0, for example. Now, if you take a look at the JS output of this on the server, I think you also needed to, let me see, because I think I want to see the reproduction, because I think yeah, basically like it was like this. Let me see if, yeah, okay, yeah, you see this. So like I'm declaring stuff, and stuff is a function. Now there's been an update recently where derived now also update on the server. So if you have a derived and you access a derived, we cannot just access it like this. We have to call a function so that it's a minimum of reactive. Now the problem here, and the reason why we are creating this, which is not valid JavaScript, is that once you create a derived, we keep track of the fact that stuff is a derived, right? And whenever you access stuff, we need to say, okay, this is a derived, I need to invoke the function instead of just using the normal variable. And that's what we are doing here. Now, the problem is that this modification that says, okay, change it to a function, happens inside the identifier visitor, and the identifier visitor is this one, but is also this one. So basically, what was happening, and it was very intriguing to figure out, is that this variable here was declared within the function, but it was considered like the scope changed the moment you accessed the function. So like the moment you enter the function, the scope changed, and this identifier here was visited after the scope was already changed. So basically, for what the identifier was aware, this stuff here was referencing this derived here, and so it was changing this to a function call, which resulted in this weird JavaScript syntax. So obviously, like, the fix was to actually fix the scope, and now it's not a problem anymore. There is also an interesting question here, so let me highlight this. Is creating a derived inside a function seen as an acceptable practice? I've never done it. And yes, you can create a derived whenever you need it. So you could, for example, just like create a utility function that does something like this. I don't know, count. Like you can create a utility function which is called doubler, for example, and it's a count. And then this has count time 2, for example. And now actually, to persist the reactivity, this must be a get count. So this needs to be something like this. And then you can do get count times 2. And then to return back, you need to return like inside a function of some type. So you can do return stuff. So if you do stuff like this, you can have this very nice utility function. And then what you can do is that you can say let double is equal to, this is nice, like just this is a nice trick, but you can do $sign derived dot by, and then you return, you invoke doubler, and you pass in count time 2. So if you do stuff like this, this is basically creating a derived outside the function, which is invoking the function. The function is returning the actual function, and it's returning this derived here from this, which persists the reactivity. And so like now you can just use double like this. So I can do double, and then I can do button on click is equal count plus plus like this. And so now basically this is a small utility function that it always returns the double. Yeah, I mean, I'm passing not count, I need to pass count, not count time 2. And so like this will always return the double of count, and you can basically do this stuff. And you can return a function and then use derived.by if you want to use stuff like this. If you don't want to use derived.by, you can also return a getter with a get value, and you return stuff. And then you can not use a derived.by and then do double.value. That's the same thing. So as you can see, it works and it's reactive. And yeah, this is basically like, it's one of the main selling point of Svelte 5, which is that you can use reactivity. You can create state and derived everywhere, not just at the top level of a component. Okay, update expression on server derived. So this was another small issue with transformation. So for server derived, so like when you are using a derived on the server, if you were using an expression, so something like let me actually show you, because there is already a thing here. So like stuff, if I want to try to update this, and I do stuff plus plus, because like you can reassign a derived. If you take a look at the JS output on the server, it was this thing here, which was like, it is not valid JavaScript. And so if we move to the next version, now we have this update derived on the server, which actually works how it should. Further obfuscate node crypto import from overzealous static analysis. Once again, I think we already talked about this a few weeks ago, but basically ESLint, I think, is doing like some dumb static analysis, like it's probably literally doing if string contains node colon crypto, then warn about something. And we are importing node crypto only in case crypto is not available on the global dis, which shouldn't be the case anymore. Like it's just basically on some version of node 18, which we still support. But most of the times, like we will never import it. And especially we will never import something like that when ESBuild is involved, I think. And so like that's just over like it's just like to prevent a warning. Fix render catch of a wait block with correct key. So this is, I think it was a fix for hydration. Pin aria query to 5.3.1. I'm curious about this, like why that's needed. The only change between blah and blah is to support version of node before 4 with the cost of a minuscule but pointless performance hit. This is a pretty stable library, and there have been no further changes in ensuing year and a half. So it seems pretty safe to pin to the previous version. So there has been a bit of a drama around ARIA query, I think, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, there is the who may not be named. I mean, we know the story. Fix makes string coercion consistent to string. So this is a nice little change. So if you take a look at the reproduction, it was a very nice reproduction because basically it solved the problem by itself. But basically the problem was in the reproduction, if you take a look, that in some cases we were manually concatenating the string inside the code. So for example, yeah, if you see here, like we are using a template literal and then passing the value. And when you do template literal and this value is coerced. So like this value, it's a class. So to actually get the string value out of it, it's invoking toString. However, if you don't do that and you just use value like this, inside setText, which is the function that we are using to set the text, we were not doing the template literal. We were literally doing plus empty string. And when you are doing coercion in that way, what the JavaScript engine is actually calling is value of. And so the result was that, as you can see, sometimes, like if you had a situation like this, even for cases that were objectively similar, like this is p.value, like we are like rendering value inside a p tag, and we are rendering value inside a p tag, but there's also extra text. Like the very slight changes were causing different methods to be called. And so if we switch now to the latest version, you can see that now it's more consistent and it's always invoking toString. This, by the way, is also a nice trick that we were talking yesterday with Enrico. But let's say that you have something like this, constructor num, this.num is equal to num, and then value of is equal to this.num. Now, this widget class can be, if I have value 1 and value 2, watch what happens. I can now, since I have a value of, which is equal to the number, I can say something like this, 1, 2, and I can say value is greater than value 2. And this will be false, but if I do oh. Huh, that's weird. This should work because, basically when you are coercing a value, let me see if I console log, maybe that's the problem. Oh, constructor, yeah. So as you can see, like now is false when it's greater, but it's true when it's less than. And the reason is that when you're doing coercions, the value of a function that you declare on a function is what is being called to coerce that number down. So this is also true for Booleans, for example. So I think if I do stuff like this, not value, if I return false from here, no, that's not the case. Okay, I can't remember if that's the case. But for example, like if I do plus value, that's the number that you get. So plus value 2 is 2. So this is how basically it's creating this class, how it's coercing to this kind of stuff. There's another question, interesting, which is value of is odd. Are you supposed to implement it when your class wraps a number? technically no. So value of, it can return whatever. So like this can actually return also a string, for example. And like, so it's basically just the method that gets invoked when you return, when you do stuff, when you coerce stuff. And now generally, like type coercion in JavaScript, it's kind of a mess because it kind of depends on like the original value and the like on both values. So like, for example, if you do plus value, you are coercing that value to a number. But if you do stuff like value plus value 2, that's also a coercion, as you can see. So we are invoking, like we are coercing this to a string, and so value of is invoked. And so you can technically say like this.num. But you can also say like this.num.toString and return a string from there, and then like it kinds of like if it is a primitive value. And you can also return a boolean, obviously. So yeah, you should be also be able to return a boolean. So if I do this.num %2 is equal to 0, this one should coerce to different values, I think. They're not. I don't know if this counts as a coercion. Like coercion in JavaScript is a mess, and I always have to look that up. So, but yeah, it's interesting to test stuff. Like this is basically a way. Value of should be considered as how do I turn this class into a primitive. That's more or less my understanding. So if you implement toString but not toValue, you cannot use a plus operator. I guess, yes, like toString is just literally using toString. So if I do this and I do plus value, it's a none. It's not a number because like it's trying to coerce that, but it's not able to coerce because there's no value of. So yeah. Okay, let's move on. Set server context after async transform error. So transform error is a new thing that we have available because now basically server boundaries, Svelte boundaries also catch errors on the server. And you can provide a transform error function to basically transform the error that gets thrown by a top level Svelte boundary. And we will use this in SvelteKit. I don't know if Simon is already working on that. I'm pretty sure it is, to actually make plus error page works when you're using a Svelte boundary. And we needed to set the context back after something asynchronous worked inside transform error. Otherwise, the function would run and the context was lost. Iterate if blocks correctly. Once again, like once in a while, like hydration gets fucked in some way because it's very hard to keep track of like how hydration behave when you're making some other changes maybe. Handle default parameter scope leak. This is kind of related to this other one, like this one, sharded function name correctly. And it was always a bug around. It was kind of the same thing, but it was about the fact that you could have a function that had some parameter which was using a default value from outside and then was named like inside. It's a bit of a mess, a bit of an edge case, but it's now fixed. Prevent flush defect from running again. So I think from what I've seen in the repo, Rich is kind of working on like kind of unifying and fixing the effect generation and batching strategy that we have. So this is probably one part of that. And then we have a couple of like update your dependencies. We have a couple of security vulnerability. To be fair, there's not really like a huge security vulnerability. For example, this is if you were using inner text or text content binding on a content editable. So if you were doing stuff like this, div, let me refresh the page just for, if we were doing something like div content editable, once you have content editable, you can do stuff like bind text content, right? And you can bind it to a variable value like this, right? And if you have the value somewhere, let value is equal or some state, blah, blah, blah. If you have something like this, this value will become the text content of the div. Because you have content editable inside. Now, content editable is very interesting because with content editable, like this is a div, but I can treat it like an input basically. And if I select everything and I press Command B, it also gets bold, right? If I press Command E, it gets italic. So in content editable is basically what generally is used to get rich content out of that. Now, the problem is if you're using bind text content and you do stuff like this, cool, Svelte is still needs to escape this, right? And this is not a problem on the client side, because on the client side, when you do bind text content, under the hood, we are literally doing text content. So if I do bind text content, I'm getting a text content like div.textContent, which if you pass something like this, will actually return like escaped HTML. Now, if I do bind inner HTML, that's different, and it's actually invoking inner HTML. Now, the problem was on the server, because on the server, obviously there's no such thing as text content or inner HTML, and so we need to kind of do the job of the browser. And when you do bind text content, we need to push the value that you are using inside the template that we actually render. And the issue was that we were not escaping that. So as you can see, basically the problem was that even for text content and inner text, which in HTML are actually escaped in the client, we were not doing the escape on the server, which meant that if you did something like this with user-controlled input for some reason, I don't know why you should do something like that, but maybe you did it. If you did something like this, what could happen is that you could end up with like the user content unsanitized into the HTML. So like you could get XSS attacks. So update your dependency to latest and that's fixed for you. Same thing for transform error values. So before embedding that in HTML comment, they need to be escaped. Otherwise, some malicious attacker could somehow get the error to close the comment and then have access to the HTML. 6th new release of SvelteKit. So let's see. I think actually, yeah, we already had this. I don't know if we checked this already, but now SvelteKit officially supports Vite 8. So if you want to switch to Vite 8, which is using roll down, which is in Rust under the hood, you can now do it with SvelteKit. Remove event listener on form attachment cleanup. So when the form is destroyed, the event listeners are removed. Apply queries refreshed in a form remote function when a redirect is thrown. So when you redirect something, if there are any query that are refreshed in a form remote function, even if you redirect, the queries should be refreshed. Address warning about inline dynamic import when using Vite 8. So this added a new warning, it was popping up and now it is not anymore. Server render nested form value sets. Okay, so if you do form.set, which is like with remote function, you can do form.set to basically initialize the values to something. It was not server rendered when it was a nested object, and now it is. Use deep partial types for form remote function value and set. So this is just about TypeScript. Provide correct URL info to remote function. So when you are inside the remote function, you were getting the wrong URL info, and now it's the correct one. Allow optional types for remote query, command, pre-render function. What does it mean, optional type? Oh, okay. So now you can actually have yeah, basically you cannot have, before this, you could not have had something like optional Boolean. It was like required that you used like something like this. You want to be able to say, okay, if like only you get it. Like you can now pass an optional oh boy. Sorry. You can now pass an optional. How is this called? Guys, sorry. Okay, this thing. I can remember the name for the life of me. You can now pass an optional of this to all the values, which is nice. I had this problem in the past. Allow commands in more places. I guess, yeah, that's probably because command were you were not able to call a command in a post, put, patch, delete handler and in form actions, and now you can. So like if you have a command, you can use that command on the client, like by invoking it, or on the server inside new stuff like post, put, patch, delete, and form handlers. So that's nice. Fix prevent overlapping file metadata in remote function form. This should also be a security vulnerability. And by the way, guys, like I tend to like, the reason why we are fixing so many vulnerabilities is because there is a new bug bounty program. So if you find a security vulnerability in Svelte, you can submit through HackerOne with the Vercel bug bounty program and get paid for it. And so this means that people are now stress testing SvelteKit and Svelte to find vulnerability, because obviously they want money out of this. But this is very good because it means that after like the dust settled, SvelteKit will be a much more secure framework, which is very, very nice. Let's see. Adapter Cloudflare. This was last time. Adapter Netlify 2 days ago. Generate catch-all function that handles remote function request and unknown routes when the app is configured to use split function. I actually saw Teaming talking about this. Basically, like in Adapter Netlify now, you can actually like we use split functions. So like each function gets its own Netlify function, and we needed a way to get a catch-all function, and now we have. Adapter node, bump rollup to that. Adapter Vercel. Ensure build does not copy Vercel build environment system files. They also updated dependencies. I think 404 for immutable asset and okay, this was last time already. We have a new release for enhanced image. Use JPEG as fallback format when source does not have an alpha channel. That's nice. Enhanced image, if you're not aware, is the solution to get like performant images on Svelte automatically. New release of Svelte.js open code, which is just a better sub-agent instruction to use MCP or skill. So if you are using the adapter open code, there are new sub-agent instructions. So if you use the sub-agent, before it was just talking about the MCP, and now it's talking either about the MCP or the CLI or the skill. So that's nice. 2 new release of Vite plugin Svelte, one of which is a major. Now, technically, this was published by mistake in the sense that we reverted back to Vite plugin Svelte 6 as latest. Otherwise, because this will require Vite 8. And like SvelteKit now supports Vite 8, but obviously like this should be done in parallel when Vite 8 actually ships, because right now Vite 8 is still in beta. So yeah, there will be some breaking changes like requiring Vite 8, remove some deprecated option like Vite plugin hot, compiler option HMR, Vite plugin ignore plugin preprocessor should be moved to that. ID filter use API.filter, plugin.api Svelte preprocess, yeah. And this requires Svelte 5.46.4 or later. So yeah, like if you want to upgrade to Vite plugin Svelte 7, you also need to have to be on Svelte 5.46.4. Yeah. We have a new release of ESLint config, which is to upgrade to ESLint 10. A new release of the extension, because now you can actually use tsignore with comment within tags. So if you saw it, we talked about it last week, but basically now you can actually do stuff like this in Svelte. So you can do, this is a comment. Now there's no syntax highlighting in the playground. Probably we should fix this, but it is valid and it is working. Like you actually get syntax highlighting in your editor, and this also works for tsignore. So you can do at tsignore blah 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 blah. So like this will work for that. And I wonder if it's already, I don't know if Simon already fixed the fact that, let's say that you have let's say you can do a href is equal to this. I don't know if I can, let's see, can I do Svelte? Come on. Svelte ignore. I don't think I can do it because it's on the whole thing. I don't think I can do it. Yeah. I still need to do it like this. I wonder if there's something. So let me see. Like should be emg alt is equal to image should be off. Now that's still on the whole. I don't know. Okay, it's fine. I can think of something that it's only on the thing, on an attribute, but I don't know. I'll check later if it's actually respected. Support for comments in tag, okay. Let's see, we have a new prettier plugin Svelte, which should be print attribute comment. We have a new SV release, which is remove commented out platform placeholder, update imports to use better out minimal. Oh, that's nice. Improve ad hook handle robustness. Okay, that's nice. We have 5 new releases of SvelteCheck. I mean, some of those are actually older, so yeah. We have this new incremental TSGO mode, which is much faster for SvelteCheck. So I think we talked about it last time, but you can do SvelteCheck -- incremental -- TSGO to use the TSGO compiler and to do something but that basically only checks the generated files instead of old files once again. Respect TS ignoring comment within tag, more robust detection of lang TS attribute, pass file name to warning filter, resolve Svelte file under path alias in incremental TSGO mode. So it was ignoring the path aliases and now they are not. Svelte ESLint parser, move Semver dependency from dev to production dependency, improve compatibility with ESLint v10. 4 new releases of Svelte language server, pass file name to warning filter, support comment in tag. Yeah, and this we already checked this last time. And finally, we have Svelte to TSX, which is always the same for sure. Respect TS ignore within comments. Detect the existing satisfy. Yeah. And that's actually it. All right, guys, that's it for today. It was a bit of a like mess initially. Sorry. But I hope that you still enjoyed this and you still learned something, and I'll see you guys next Friday. Bye.